President Trump announced a new trade landscape for the world on Wednesday. The toadies from the modern oligarchical financial system have been screaming ever since. Trump has killed globalization, their religion. They beat the hell out of stocks on Thursday and Friday to the extent that any human beings have control over the machine and algorithmic trading of that modern gambling den. They have undertaken what might be called Project to sow fear and panic in a desperate attempt to save only themselves. Like China's retaliatory tariff imposed on American imports, they panicked, Donald Trump says, inflicting the ultimate harm only on themselves. We say, long live and prosper the American working and middle class, who Donald Trump has transformed into citizens over the course of his battles of the last 10 years. These are the people Trump loves and who love him in turn. The complete lack of that love for your people and your country is the cancer which eats at the soul of the system Trump is killing and exposing. The manifestation of that love in the form of renewed patriotism, in the form of willingness to sacrifice on behalf of Trump's effort to save the nation, in the form of an energetic eagerness to build the future, was more than evident in the passion of the auto workers and other unionists who attended Wednesday's Rose Garden ceremony. That's what the now crippled globalists will never, never understand. Be it the deep state exercising mind control over our country and trying to kill Trump for breaking that control, or now the so-called economists who have been wrong about everything for the last 50 years in promoting a system which only benefits the world's entrenched elites and their professional retainers, Trump's refusal to go along, his dedication to the American system of economics, results in constantly exposing elite incompetence, stupidity, corruption, and criminality. That sunlight, in turn, means certain death for those who normally operate under the shield of darkness. I'm Barbara Boyd, and this is your Saturday Wrap. The two stories we're working on today are Trump's tariff policy, something we aspiring Prometheans have fought for over 50 years, and the recent revelations about the fact that the presidency of the United States was vacant from 2020 to 2024. We have been saying ever since 1988 that Joe Biden suffered from a form of mental incompetency. During his presidency, it turns out, he was so delusional that he thought he was the president of NATO, not the president of the United States. That comes from recent statements by one of his closest advisors, former White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain. It explains a whole lot about the disastrous Green New scam and the genocidal wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. Now, I'm calling the war around Trump's complete reordering of the world on Wednesday Project Fear versus Build, Baby, Build. The Washington Post said this morning that Trump is reversing an 80-year drive towards globalism and world prosperity put in place after World War II. That's the central lie of the Project Fear propaganda drive now underway. Globalization really didn't kick off until 1971, when Richard Nixon was convinced by the British agent George Shultz to destroy the Bretton Woods fixed exchange rate monetary system. Franklin Roosevelt had fought for a post-war order in which use of the hugely productive economy created by the war mobilization would serve as the economic engine to end British imperialism and colonialism and develop the whole world as self-sufficient modern nation states. He told the very evil Winston Churchill that he would end the British Empire. Constant scientific revolutions and breakthroughs, constant technological progress, constant empowerment of our individual citizens to live a productive and creative life was the American brand, not the British Empire's predatory financial system and its effete culture. Roosevelt died, and it took a long while to kill off his iteration of the American system. The stupid Harry Truman took over. JFK tried to revive the American system and end the Cold War, and he was assassinated for that. Until Donald Trump, all the presidents after Kennedy sold out Americans for the benefit of globalist financier interests. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Tucker Carlson on Thursday that the system our national news media is now attempting to sell us hollowed out and depopulated the entire center of the country. That is all the nation absent the two coasts. If you haven't caught Bessent's entire interview with Tucker, take the time to watch it over the weekend. It will clear up any confusion about tariffs or about what Trump is up to. Tonight, our Brian Lance and Keisha Rogers will show you other aspects of Trump's plan. The future-based scientific journey Trump has set the nation on once again, which will result in the productive power of our population leaping to untold heights. This is a must-watch also. In his interview with Tucker, Scott Bessent says that Trump's tariffs have one goal: getting manufacturing and industry back into the United States so that we can become a healthy economy once again. Right now, we are at the mercy of China for our own defense manufacturing, our own list of life essential drugs, and China is leaping ahead of us in key transformative technologies like fusion power and advanced nuclear power, the fuel sources of the future. COVID showed us the awful realities of globalization, when we could not manufacture or even obtain essential medicines and supplies. Suppose we are attacked. Would we like to ask China for the drones and other essentials which we right now don't even produce? As a Wall Street veteran, Bessent also notes that the current stock market run is a product of the tech bubble, particularly the artificial intelligence bubble. He notes that presently more than 50% of our population live in perilous debt, perilous economic insecurity and anxiety, while the top 10% of the population own 80% of all stocks. If Trump did not act, we would be headed towards a financial meltdown because of the unsustainable government spending and unpayable national debt set into motion by Biden's green agenda. We have to build our way out of this mess, and we can't do it without bringing in new sources of revenue, protecting our new industries and inventors, rebuilding our manufacturing industrial infrastructure base, and granting incentives in other ways to producers to produce again here. If we get back to making things, as importantly, the identities of our citizens will be once again transformed into the proud, productive identities which once were our nation's lifeblood. That's what the tariffs are all about. The so-called wonderful system Trump has upended disappeared. All the small, prosperous towns in America, which used to have either an industrial manufacturing or farming function. Major industrial centers, whole cities were hollowed out with tourism, sports, gambling, and the gig economy-based services becoming the sources of revenue in cities. Births dropped. Family formation went out of fashion. The Malthusian zero-growth center of the oligarchy's plans since 1971, and deaths from drugs, despair, and poverty rose, all according to very explicit plans first set out in the 1970s by Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Trilateral Commission. As this system was implemented worldwide, it plunged the entire world into a demographic crisis, with deaths vastly outpacing births and the all-important function of the family replaced by sexually fluid identity politics. The commoners in this system, the losers, as the Democrats call more than half the country, are encouraged to live as distracted consumers rather than citizens, pacified by commercial and hedonistic pursuits as main centers of profit in the purposeless, drugged-up lives they are encouraged to live. So who let these dogs out? Well, as we have long said, George Soros and Karl Popper are the authors of globalism. I think the cultural part of this system, the cultural part Trump is killing, is more important even than the economic aspect. It is satanic. Look no further than what Soros and his mentor, Sir Karl Popper, who invented the present world government and who the writer N.S. Lyons has summarized in a piece he wrote this week. Both God and love are banned in this system as authoritarian and fascist. Popper and Soros advocate what they call social technology, a machine-like form of governance by expert institutional technologists approved by the financial elite. That's the central idea, of course, of the current bureaucracy Trump is dismantling in Washington. They manage public opinion through censorship and propaganda. They enforce open borders in order to destroy the nation state and profit from cheap and enslaved labor. Their ideal is a world government in which no one cares about the fate of individual nations or the common good. Strong national bonds, strong loves of any kind, of family, nation, truth, God, are seen as dangerous, as dogmatic, as authoritarian, as fascist. The reality is that their philosophy is fascism. MAGA, build, baby, build, is Republican because it absolutely depends on you, the individual citizen, and your creative development and growth. So those are the stakes. It's a war for your future. It's an economic revolution. But like any major transformation, it won't be easy. As JFK said, upon summoning the American people to the moon missions, Americans are undertaking it not because it is easy, but because it is hard. That used to be the American creed. They have tried to stamp it out. Trump, in his love for this population, is resurrecting it once again. That's what MAGA is all about. Now, concerning the Biden presidency and the statement you could make to wit, the president is dead. A couple of books are out in the press documenting Joe Biden's mentally collapsed state throughout his entire presidency and the massive government conducted by his staff, the Democratic Party, and the corporate media of this fact. One of them, to be released in May, is called President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and His Disastrous Choice to Run Again. It's by Alex Thompson and Jake Tapper, two of the journalists most involved in the cover-up. It's what's called in the trade a limited hangout. Some truths in order to save the authors who were complicit. Another, by Chris Whipple, about the 2024 campaign, quotes former White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain, saying that Biden was so delusional at the time of his infamous debate with Trump that he thought he was president of NATO rather than president of the United States. Well, doesn't that summarize the whole issue here? Biden thought he was president of the enforcement arm of world oligarchy. Hence, he implemented the Green New Deal, open borders, the whole gambit of globalist policies, and created the present intended forever wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. He imprisoned or attempted to imprison his key opponents. He sent the opposition to jail. He was a good president of NATO, and NATO was running the United States. I think this will go down in history as the most significant scandal of the century, the vacating of the office of President of the United States. That's why you see such furor about what Trump is doing. The president is back. By now, we were supposed to be a controlled economic zone in their world system. The committee of robots to run the country had all been arranged. They thought they proved that the president and the Constitution didn't matter. But the people said, no, we want a leader. We want a president. And we will reward someone who finally loves us rather than stepping on us at every turn. That's the story of the 2024 election. I'll see you again on Monday. Tune in to the class tonight. It's must-seeing. Go to Promethean Action and become a member if you like these conversations. We'll help you join them and become active. Again, thanks very much for listening.
Thanks for watching. Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.